Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 5 of our course. Today, I will be reviewing some information regarding offender programming and treatment, which will be covered more in depth over your readings for the next 2 weeks. I first want to note that offender programming covers a wide range of subjects, including education such as adult basic education, GED, college courses, and vocational courses, along with support groups, substance abuse treatment in groups, mental health treatment in groups, along as well as other wellness education within prisons specifically. Outside of prison, reentry programs offer similar groups, along with assistance in obtaining employment, continuing education, transportation assistance, and assistance in addressing well-being needs, such as applying for health care or for other need-based assistance programs. Now, for some history and background on offender programming and treatment. Probation has its heritage in European practices that attempted to alleviate the harshness of the criminal law. In the United States, probation goes back to the 1830s when John Augustus volunteered to stand bail for people in Boston police court. Today, probation exists as a sentencing option in every state of the United States and is sometimes operated by the courts and is sometimes operated by the correctional department. Intermediate sanctions are used because many people believe that a sentence of probation is not strict enough, but that prison is too extreme. To implement intermediate sanctions, many jurisdictions have developed the continuum of sanctions concept, which offers a range of correctional options between prison and probation. Courts offer pretrial division, fines, forfeiture, community service, and restitution. Probation departments or community corrections offer day reporting centers, intensive supervision, home confinement, and electronic monitoring. And correctional departments offer shock incarceration and boot camps. Intermediate sanctions struggle with the problem of widening the net of social control. To be effective, they have to target the right group of offenders, place less emphasis on surveillance and control, and more emphasis on services. Correctional systems develop this range of punishments that vary in intrusiveness and control so that there are a wider variety of punishments rather than just probation or prison. This allows for the continuum of sanctions to create more reasonable accountability for offenders. For example, probation plus a fine of community service may be appropriate for minor offenses, whereas 6 weeks of boot camp followed by an intensive probation supervision may be right for a more serious crime. Problems with intermediate sanctions include the selection of the appropriate agencies to run them, selecting the right offenders to place in them without bias, and avoiding widening that net of social control. To make intermediate sanctions work, there must be interchangeability of sanctions so that penalties in the community can be compared to penalties in confinement. Furthermore, surveillance and control must be used carefully so that sanctions do not backfire. Various community corrections legislation encourages communities to keep offenders locally instead of sending them to prison. In doing so, communities can then use some of the correctional costs that were saved as funds for local programs that manage those offenders. These strategies work when the cost incentives are large enough to reward communities for keeping offenders locally and when jail is not used as a replacement for prison. Community-based correctional approaches face challenges of getting public support for keeping offenders in community programs instead of sending them to incarceration. The future of community-based correctional methods will depend upon the development of proven options for dealing with offenders in community context and the development of community support for placing people in those options. This can further be assisted through clarifying and refining the mission of community corrections as a whole. Now I'm going to move into probation and more specifically probation officers and what all is entailed within probation itself. Um, Probation officers have traditionally performed two major functions: investigation and supervision. Investigation involves the preparation of a PSI or a pre-sentence investigation, which a judge will use when sentencing an offender. The PSI is especially important within the sentencing process due to judicial discretion. Individual judges, even within the same court system, may weigh factors within a case differently. Therefore, the PSI must be comprehensive enough to provide necessary information to judges with varying sentencing perspectives. A shortened, directed, and standardized PSI format is becoming more common. The three major issues within PSIs are whether to make sentencing recommendations, whether to disclose the contents of the PSI to the defendant, and whether private investigative firms ought to be allowed to provide judges with PSIs paid for by the defendant. Once a sentence is decided, supervision begins, and it involves three steps. First, establishing a relationship with the offender. Second, setting supervision goals to help the offender comply with the conditions established by the court. And third, deciding how to terminate probation on the basis of the offender's response to supervision. The probation officer faces role conflict in virtually every aspect of the job. Most of this conflict originates in the uneasy combination of two responsibilities: enforcing the law and helping the offender. Although the responsibilities may be compatible, they often aren't. The offender's response to supervision depends in part, on his or her perception of the officer's power. Most probationers believe they have little effect on the supervision process. Although probation officers' real power is limited by law and bureaucracy, offenders may see the officer, as occupying a commanding role. All supervision activities take place in the context of a bureaucratic organization, which imposes both formal and informal constraints. Conditions of probation or community corrections typically fall into one of three categories: standard, punitive, and treatment conditions. Standard conditions imposed on all probationers include reporting to the probation office, notifying the agency of any change of address, remaining gainfully employed, and not leaving the jurisdiction without permission. Punitive conditions, including fines, community service, and some forms of restitution, are designed to increase the restrictiveness or painfulness of probation and usually reflects the seriousness of the offense. Treatment conditions force the probationer to deal with a significant problem or need, such as substance abuse. Recidivism, the return of a former correctional client to criminal behavior, is measured by new arrests or other problems with the law and is the basis on which analysts decide if a probation strategy is working. Currently, evidence-based practices are utilized within offender programming, though most studies of the effectiveness of probation supervision find no difference in outcomes for different probation strategies. When it comes to preventing new arrests, probation may be as effective as a highly praised alternative sanctions are, and more effective than jail or prison. Finally, probation ends in one of two ways. Either the person successfully completes the period of probation, or the person's probationary status is revoked due to misbehavior. Revocation can result from a new arrest or conviction, or from a rules violation, which is a failure to comply with a condition of probation. Rule violations that result in revocations are referred to as technical violations. A revoke for technical violation, though they're somewhat controversial. Because behaviors that are not ordinary illegal, such as changing one's residence without permission or failing to attend a therapy program, neglecting to report to the probation office, and so forth, can result in incarceration. Um, well, that's all I have for you guys this week. I will not be posting a video next week since we're covering the same material over the next 2 weeks, or at least similar material, related material. But if you do have any questions about anything within the video or previous videos, and you would like some more information or clarifications, please feel free to contact me. I am available. I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Bye.